Out on the open plains, life didn't wait for the weak. The Wild West cowboy faced blistering heat by day, freezing winds by night, and miles of dust between every chance at a meal. Out there, food wasn't just survival, it was strategy. These riders of the frontier learned to outsmart time itself, crafting provisions that could last for months on end without spoiling. No refrigerators, no canned goods, just fire, salt, smoke, and grit. Every bite they packed told a story of endurance, of trail drives stretching 1,000 miles, of cattle herds and campfires glowing beneath an endless sky. So what did they eat when nothing fresh could survive the journey? What kept them alive through drought, dust storms, and danger? Join me as we uncover 20 timeless foods Wild West cowboys stockpiled that never expired, meals forged in hardship, tested by time, and still echoing through the recipes we use today. Because the secret to survival in the Wild West wasn't luck, it was what they carried in their saddlebags, as glass above him. From his saddlebag, he pulls a slab of something dark, stiff and gleaming with salt crystals. It isn't steak fresh from the ranch. It's salt horse, the tough, briny meat that kept the Wild West alive. Born from necessity, salt horse was simply beef soaked in brine and dried until it could outlast the trail itself. Cowboys learned the method from sailors and frontier soldiers, turning ordinary cuts into something nearly immortal. Once cured, it could be hauled for months across scorching plains without spoiling. A miracle when your next town was 200 miles away. The preservation secret was salt, the old world weapon against decay. It drew out every drop of moisture, sealing the meat in a fortress of dryness and mineral. When hunger hit, cowboys boiled it back to life in tin pots, turning salt-hard flesh into tender stew. It wasn't fine dining, but it was endurance on a plate. And when the salt horse ran dry, cowboys turned to another frontier classic, thin, smoky strips of wild game that carried the flavor of the hunt itself. The desert heat shimmered, coyotes howled in the distance, and from the campfire's glow hung thin, dark strips of meat dancing in the smoke. This was dried wild game, the lifeblood of a cowboy's saddlebag. Deer, elk, even jackrabbit, whatever the hunt offered, was sliced thin, salted, and hung to dry in the open air. Out there, every cowboy became his own butcher, his own preservationist. There were no second chances. Spoilage meant starvation. The secret to its longevity was simplicity, smoke, and dryness. Sun and fire chased out moisture, while salt warded off decay. The result was lean, leathery protein that could last months, light to carry, hard to break, and easy to revive over the fire. It wasn't just food, it was resilience. The smell of drying meat meant safety. It meant a man would eat tomorrow. And as the trail stretched farther and the days grew longer, cowboys sought something to break the monotony, taste of home, baked right on the coals. The sun beat down on the Texas plains, and the chuck wagon's iron lid lifted with a hiss of dust and heat. Inside, a golden round of pan de campo, the cowboy bread that never failed the trail. Made from simple ingredients, flour, lard, salt, and a splash of water, it was the West's answer to fresh bread in a land where ovens didn't exist. Cooked in cast iron skillets or buried under hot coals, it baked to a crisp crust and soft heart, perfect for soaking up beans or stew. Its preservation secret was in its simplicity. No milk, no eggs, nothing to spoil. Just dry dough, ready to bake anywhere. Cowboys often carried the dry mix in sacks, adding water on the trail when hunger struck. The smell of it, buttery and warm, was the scent of comfort in a land of hardship. Even today, Texans still bake pan de campo at cookouts, honoring the trail cook's art. But as dawn turned cold, one more ritual began. A brew strong enough to keep any cowboy awake through the long night. Before sunrise, when the world was nothing but cold, wind, and stars, cowboys reached for a handful of dried roasted coffee beans. No fancy pots, no sugar, just pure grit between their teeth. Coffee wasn't a luxury, it was lifeblood. The trail cook roasted raw beans over open flame until they cracked and smoked, then packed them away dry. Without moisture, they lasted nearly forever. Hard little nuggets of energy and endurance. Some cowboys chewed them whole to keep alert on night watch or during cattle drives that stretched for weeks. Their preservation secret was roast and dryness. Heat, burned away perishability, leaving behind caffeine and courage. The stronger the roast, the longer it kept. In the silence before dawn, that bitter crunch became a ritual, a reminder that the day had begun, and the West waited for no man. But even cowboys needed more than caffeine. They needed substance, something from the earth itself, tough and lasting as the land they rode. On the frontier, nothing went to waste, not even potatoes. Cowboys and settlers turned the humble spud into a trail miracle. Dried potatoes, light as air yet strong enough to endure entire seasons. They were sliced thin, blanched, and laid in the sun or near the campfire until every drop of moisture disappeared. What remained was crisp, pale slivers, fragile but immortal. Once packed into sacks, they could last for years, needing only water and heat to return to life. The secret was dehydration, the frontier's invisible magic. Without moisture, decay had no foothold. Cowboys boiled them into stews or mashed them soft with a bit of salt and tallow, creating comfort in the middle of nowhere. Dried potatoes were proof of frontier ingenuity, a simple food that turned famine into endurance. Even today, modern dehydrated meals echo that same principle, born from the hands of those who refuse to go hungry. And when the last embers faded, another substance waited, not from the ground or plant, but from fire itself, thick, golden, and eternal. Under the pitiless sun of the plains, every drop of fat was worth its weight in gold. When fresh meat couldn't last, cowboys turned to a secret older than the West itself, rendered fat known simply as drippings or tallow. After a slaughter, nothing went to waste. Fat was melted slowly over low heat until it turned clear and golden, then strained and cooled into a solid block that could endure for months. It never spoiled and never froze solid and could be eaten, cooked with, or used to waterproof gear. Its preservation secret was purity. Every trace of moisture cooked away, leaving only clean, stable fat. Bacteria couldn't touch it. In a world where every calorie counted, rendered fat was warmth, energy, and survival. Trail cooks mixed it into biscuits, fried beans in it, and rubbed it on leather to keep saddles supple. It was the cowboy's hidden treasure, invisible until you needed it most. Far from the firelight, though, another golden staple waited, one born not of animals, but from the fields that fed them. Long before the Wild West, indigenous farmers cultivated maize, the crop that would one day fuel every cowboy's journey. On the trail, it became dried corn, light, durable, and endlessly useful. Corn was boiled, roasted, or parched before being dried to hardness, then stored in sacks slung from saddles. The secret to its longevity was natural armor, each kernel sealed in its own shell, locking away the nutrients inside. Cowboys ground it into cornmeal for journey bread, simmered it into stew, or even chewed it raw when nothing else remained. It could survive storms, heat, and months of neglect, a miracle of endurance born from the soil. Maize became the bridge between cultures, a native crop turned cowboy necessity, proof that survival knowledge travels farther than borders. Yet when the hunger for sweetness struck, the plains offered one unexpected answer, a luxury that never spoiled. Imagine the crackle of a campfire and the scent of smoke mixed with something sweet, dried fruit, a small comfort that reminded cowboys of home. Apples, berries, and peaches were sliced thin, threaded on strings, and hung near the fire to dry slowly, their sugars concentrating into chewy jewels. These fruits carried sunlight inside them. Their preservation secret lay in sugar and dryness, natural preservatives that sealed away decay and locked in flavor. Without moisture, fruit could last for years, waiting to be boiled into stews or eaten plain on lonely trails. In the dust and grit of the West, that burst of sweetness was more than food. It was hope, a reminder of orchards, rain, and the soft world left behind. When fruit ran low, the cowboys turned to something hard, hearty, and made for rough hands, a food born in fire, eaten on horseback, and tough as the men themselves. They were small, golden, and built to survive the saddlebag, corn dodgers, the cowboys' portable bread. Made from cornmeal, bacon grease, and water, these fist-sized cakes were baked in the embers until hard enough to last for weeks. Each bite was gritty, smoky, and filling, a handful of energy that didn't spoil, crumble, or mold. The preservation secret was fire hardening. Like a brick forged from grain, corn dodgers could handle rain, dust, or heat without faltering. They were trail rations, trade goods, and sometimes the only thing between a cowboy and hunger. Eaten dry or dipped in coffee, they were a taste of survival wrapped in simplicity. Modern campers still make them, crispy, golden echoes of the frontier. Not far from the crackling fire, though, the scent of the river rose, bringing with it the next treasure of the cowboy larder. At the edge of cool rivers and high country streams, cowboys and settlers discovered another way to defy time: smoked fish. Trout, catfish, and perch were caught, cleaned, salted, and hung over smoldering wood until they turned bronze and fragrant. The secret of its immortality lay in smoke and salt, a 1-2 punch that stole moisture from the flesh and sealed it in aromatic armor. Each bite was salty, rich, and smoky, bursting with flavor even months after it was caught. Smoked fish became the quiet luxury of the trail, a food that tasted of rivers and wood smoke, of patience and precision. Cowboys often traded it with native tribes or carried it on long drives where fresh meat was rare. When hunger gnawed and supplies ran thin, one strip of smoked fish could remind a man what civilization once tasted like. But sweetness was never far behind, waiting in the dark tins and sticky jars that turned scarcity into comfort. In a world of dust and grit, sweetness was a rare treasure. For cowboys, treacle, that thick, dark syrup born from sugar refining, was liquid comfort. It flowed like molten amber, slow and heavy, carrying the scent of smoke and burnt sugar. Treacle came west in barrels and tins, shipped from ports and trading towns. It didn't spoil, didn't mold, and didn't need cooling. A miracle on the open trail. Its secret lay in its concentration of sugar, so dense that bacteria couldn't survive within it. For weary riders, it was fuel, luxury, and memory in one sticky spoonful. They poured it over hardtack, stirred it into coffee, and mixed it with dried fruit to make sweet preserves. In a life ruled by salt and smoke, treacle was a taste of civilization, a reminder that sweetness still existed beyond the desert. It became the quiet indulgence of the West, a spoonful of warmth when the nights turned cold. Yet even as the syrup thickened in the jar, another form of preservation bubbled beside it, sharp, sour, and alive with flavor. Imagine the trail stretching endlessly, dry plains, no fresh green in sight, and then the pop of a jar lid and the sharp, tangy scent of pickled vegetables. It was the cowboys' connection to freshness in a land that refused to grow anything. Cucumbers, onions, beans, even cabbage were preserved in vinegar and salt water, a process borrowed from homesteads and soldiers alike. The secret was acid and brine. The vinegar killed bacteria, the salt sealed out decay. Together, they turned fragile vegetables into something nearly eternal. Cowboys packed jars in wagons or cellars, their colors bright even after months of heat and travel. Every crisp bite, sour, salty, alive, cut through the monotony of dry bread and meat. Pickling wasn't just a recipe, it was rebellion, a way to hold on to spring in a world of dust. Long after the jars emptied, one element remained, the very mineral that made all preservation possible. And it was worth more than gold on the frontier. Salt. Simple, white, eternal. The one ingredient no cowboy could live without. It cured meat, flavored food, healed wounds, and kept the West alive. Without it, there was no preservation, no endurance, no tomorrow. Cowboys gathered it from salt flats, traded it by the block, or carried pouches of coarse crystals in their gear. The preservation secret was osmosis. Salt pulled water from meat and fish, drying it before rot could begin. It purified, preserved, and protected everything it touched. It wasn't just seasoning, it was survival science. The chuck wagon always carried sacks of it, carefully rationed and guarded. In campfire cooking, a handful could mean the difference between sickness and strength. Salt was also sacred. To share it was a gesture of trust, an unspoken bond between travelers who might not meet again. And when salt ran low, cowboys turned to the one thing that could last even longer: a food so plain, so indestructible, it earned the nickname molar breakers. If endurance had a sound, it would be the crack of hardtack under a cowboy's teeth. This unyielding biscuit, flour, salt, water, nothing more, was baked to rock hardness and packed by the hundreds in tin boxes. Hardtack was never soft or kind. It was made for survival, not satisfaction. But it could last decades, impervious to moisture, mold, or time. The secret was absolute dryness. No fat, no sugar, nothing for life to cling to. Soldiers carried it in the Civil War, and cowboys carried it west. To eat it, you'd soak it in coffee until it softened, or crumble it into stew to give it body. Sometimes men joked it was so hard you could use it as a hammer, and sometimes they did. It was the taste of the trail, simple, tough, enduring, the very definition of frontier food. Still, not every staple was so unforgiving. Some offered comfort, soft, earthy, and drawn straight from the grain fields of home. In burlap sacks stacked high on the chuck wagon, grains waited patiently for their turn at the fire. Wheat, oats, and barley, the quiet foundation of cowboy survival. Their preservation secret was nature itself. Once dried, each grain sealed its heart in a shell that could last for years if kept cool and dry. It was a living seed in stasis, carrying the promise of life through drought, frost, or endless travel. Cowboys ground wheat into flour for biscuits, boiled oats into mush, and roasted barley into hearty porridge. When meat ran scarce, grains became the meal that filled bellies and calmed spirits. In a land of impermanence, they represented continuity. The same foods that fed farmers back east carried now through deserts and canyons. The smell of grain cooking over fire was comfort, routine, and memory. Even today, these humble grains endure in every pantry, a gift from the trail that still feeds us when everything else fades away. And from those fields of gold, the story of cowboy endurance continues. One meal, one ember, one heartbeat at a time. When the trail stretched endless and supplies ran thin, nothing filled a cowboy's belly like a pot of beans. Simple, hearty, and eternal, they were the soul of campfire cooking. The meal you could trust when everything else ran out. Dried beans and peas were perfect for the harsh frontier. Their preservation secret was natural desiccation. Each seed sealed tight in its shell, stripped of moisture but bursting with protein and strength. Cowboys carried sacks of them in every chuck wagon. When soaked and simmered with salt pork or tallow, they turned into thick, smoky stew that could feed a camp for days. They were cheap, nourishing, and nearly indestructible. The cowboy's steak, as the old-timers said. The scent of beans bubbling in an iron pot became a symbol of rest, of firelight, and fellowship after long days on the trail. Even now, that smell feels like home, a reminder that survival can be both humble and satisfying. But when beans weren't enough, cowboys reached for a food that tasted like luxury, sharp, rich, and aged to perfection. Tucked deep in saddlebags, wrapped in cloth and wax, rode a treasure from the old world. Hard cheese, dense, salty, and long-lasting. It was one of the few luxuries a cowboy could carry across the plains. Aged for months before the journey, hard cheeses like cheddar or Parmesan shed their moisture until they were firm and nearly immortal. The preservation secret was fermentation and fat. Salt slowed bacteria, while the dense oils sealed the cheese from air. Some could survive for half a year without spoiling, even in the desert heat. Cowboys sliced it thin over biscuits, grated it into beans, or simply chewed on it as a rare indulgence after days of bland food. It was rich, filling, and a reminder of civilization's taste in a world ruled by dust. When a man shared his cheese by the campfire, it wasn't just food, it was friendship. But not all treasures came wrapped in cloth. Some came from the trees themselves, wild, hard, and hidden beneath shells of survival. Before grocery stores and supply towns, cowboys looked to the land itself, and the land answered with nuts. Pecans, walnuts, and hazelnuts were gathered wherever trees offered them, pocket-sized miracles of protein and endurance. Foraged nuts could last an entire season thanks to their natural armor, a shell built by nature to keep out moisture and decay. Once cracked open, they delivered dense energy and vital oils, keeping men strong when fresh food was a dream. Cowboys roasted them near the fire or ground them into paste for trail bread. Their scent, warm, smoky, earthy, was the smell of quiet abundance. In lean months, nuts were traded like gold, small treasures that needed no cooking, no care, only gratitude. They were nature's own trail ration, wild, free, and eternal. Yet for all their strength, even nuts couldn't compare to what grew beneath the earth itself. Foods hidden in darkness, kept cool and alive long after harvest. Beneath the floorboards of homesteads and bunkhouses, another miracle of the West endured: root-cellared vegetables. Potatoes, carrots, onions, and turnips rested in cool earth, protected from frost and time. Before refrigeration, the root cellar was science and faith combined. The preservation secret was controlled climate, constant cool temperatures, and humidity that kept vegetables firm for months. Cowboys returning from the trail often found these stores untouched, still good long after harvest. For long winters root crops were life itself, roasted, boiled, or stewed into the kind of meals that made a man forget the cold. Their scent filled cabins with comfort, grounding the restless heart of the wanderer. Root cellars weren't just storage. They were insurance against hunger, carved into the soil by those who knew how to listen to the land. Yet even with all this ingenuity, there was one frontier food that combined every lesson: energy, preservation, and endurance into one perfect creation. If one food could define survival, it was pemmican, the frontier's most powerful provision, borrowed from Native American tradition and perfected by trappers and cowboys alike. Made from strips of dried meat pounded into powder mixed with melted fat and berries, pemmican was dense, nutritious, and almost indestructible. It could last for decades if kept dry. The preservation secret lay in balance. Fat sealed out air, dryness killed decay, and the mixture locked in every ounce of energy a man needed. Pemmican fueled explorers, soldiers, and cattle drivers across thousands of miles. A single handful could sustain a rider for an entire day. It tasted of smoke and life, heavy, primal, unforgettable. To the cowboy, it wasn't just food, it was endurance in its purest form, a meal that outlasted hardship, time, and even memory. And though the frontier has faded, its wisdom remains. What the cowboys carried wasn't just food, it was survival made immortal. The Wild West was more than grit and gunpowder. It was ingenuity. Every salted slab, smoked cut, and dried ration was proof that survival wasn't luck, it was skill. But food wasn't the only thing they learned to master. In the next story, we'll uncover how cowboys kept fresh meat from rotting, even under the burning sun, miles from ice or shade. The answer isn't what you'd expect. It's a lost art, part science, part survival, and entirely genius. Stay tuned, because the next chapter reveals how the West conquered decay without a single drop of refrigeration.